the long and winding road that leads.
So the patent, which the examiner said already covered what I was doing, was filed by a guy named Lin. And here's what a page from his patent application looks like. You notice that instead of having, say, a 2 that is the same size as any other block but has a digit 2 on it, a 2 is represented by two 1 blocks glued together, 3, 4, 5. So this is at a lower level. There's no abstract thinking here. You can tell that's a 2 because it's two 1s, as opposed to a 2 or a 3. The 2 and 3 in my set look identical. But so he had these blocks, and then he went on later on in his application to show that this allows one with a 2-pan balance to demonstrate addition. And here's how you demonstrate addition. Notice we have a 2 block and a 3 block, and they add up to 5. 2 plus 3 equals 5. Perfect, right? And then in the next page, Lin demonstrates that his blocks demonstrate multiplication. We have a 2 block and a 3 block, and 2 times 3 equals 6. But wait, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks here, and there's 6 blocks over here, so these aren't going to balance. I agree. Lin does have a brilliant way to demonstrate addition, because 2 blocks plus 3 blocks does equal 5 blocks. But to claim simultaneously that 2 blocks times 3 blocks equals 6 blocks, and the way you're demonstrating this is by putting them on 2 pans of a balance, it's false. So what Andrew Fortney came back with was the realization that the patent examiner was not going to budge. And the reason she wasn't going to budge is because if she had admitted that, in fact, ours was original, then they would have to admit that they had made a mistake in granting a patent to Mr. Lin, because he was claiming that 2 plus 3, effectively, 2 plus 3 equals 2 times 3. And no matter how many times Andrew showed the blocks to this woman and put them on the balance and demonstrated that there is addition going on with the black blocks and there's multiplication going on with the colored blocks, she just, my mind's made up, I'm not changing it. So he came back, having spent lots of money and time. I mean, $400 per billable hour, and he flies to Washington, D.C. on his dime. I mean, this became a very expensive proposition for Andrew. So when he came back, he's not the sort of guy to give up. He filed an appeal. And this appeal it's incredible. I've read it. It's 20 pages of dense legalese. And what is going on is the reader is getting beaten over the head over and over again. If 2 plus 3 is 5, then 2 times 3 cannot equal the same thing, because 2 times 3 means you're taking 3 and you're taking 2 of the 3's, and that means it's going to be 6, and it's not equal to 5. I mean, it's just over and over and over again, just clubbing the readers to death practically, with the totally obvious from the very start idea that 2 plus 3 is not equal to 2 times 3. Well, Andrew's perseverance paid off, and the USPTO did, in fact, grant us a patent. And I'm very proud to say that these blocks have a patent because they're an original thing which has never been on market before. And I'm hoping it will spread because they're so cool. But the amazing coincidences don't stop there. I went to a birthday party that my best friends knew the guy that was getting a year older, and I was just tagging along because I'm my best friend's best friend. And I happened to start talking to a guy who made medieval armor. I mean, by hand. He would take steel and cut it and bend it and hammer it and join it and make, chainmail and then helmets. And then he would go to schools and give assemblies on knights and medieval history and whatnot. And he'd have kids put on these knight helmets and he'd bonk them with a mace, and it's quite a popular assembly. Well, I was talking to him, and I realized, because he was talking about how painstaking it was to do all this metal forming by hand, I said, you know, I have a really great classroom. It's the biggest classroom I've ever seen. It's 2,000 square feet, 18-foot ceilings. It's actually a shop. And I have a MIG welder, I have metal chop saw, I have a plasma cutter. So if you'd like to come down sometime and do some metalworking, feel free. Well, Everett definitely wanted to come down. So he came down one day and he played for 6 hours and cut by 90% the time it took him to fabricate some of the pieces for his armor. And he was just overjoyed and so grateful. And as we parted, he shook my hand and said, Bruce, thank you. I really owe you big time. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you. Well, that's something that people say sometimes. But I realized later what Everett does for a living is actually perfect, because his business is internet marketing. So I called him up recently and said, Everett, can we get together and you can teach me some basics about how I can take the internet and use it to move my MathMagic blocks. So I've met with him and just learned a huge amount about how that is done, and have now designed my own website, mathmagicblocks.com. It's not great, but it's been one more in a whole long series of really fun things that relate to MathMagic blocks. That, again, the theme is people see the thing, they think it's intriguing, and they are quite willing to help me along the path. So now we're actually almost at the point where we're ready to sell these guys. Now there's one more story I'd like to tell you, and that is about how I dealt with the issue of money. Because what I thought would be great would be if I could pay students, either directly or else I could set up a fund for them so that they help me, put these blocks together, because you have to take these guys and you've got to put these weights inside them. And it's very precise. The weights have to be to the nearest hundredth of a gram. It takes about an hour and a half to make one set of these guys. It's very slow. So I thought I'd hire my students, and then I'd set up a fund for each one of them, and then I would help them with college expenses, either buying textbooks or room and board or whatever, when they went to college. Well, I realized I'm pretty naive, and some teachers have been caught with their hand in the till, so to speak, or making students work for them and all this kind of stuff. So I thought, I got to figure out a way so that I will have kind of advance permission. And the person that I wanted to have on my side, of course, in the school district would be the superintendent. So I thought, I got to take these blocks down to my superintendent and show them to him and tell him what my plans are. So he'll know in advance before I get caught, exploiting childhood labor or whatnot. But if you go to your Uber boss and he or she asks you a question to explain something, you can't just sit there and smile. But I wanted to not tell him anything, because I wanted him to have the experience of playing with these guys. And I realized, hey, there is one way that I can go in and I can be excused from saying anything when he asks me a question. So I went out and got the black and white striped French sailor's shirt, and I got a couple of students who are makeup artists to give me a white face and bright red lips and black eyeshadow. And I went into his office and I waited there just like a mime. And I had the blocks on my lap, and finally the secretary said, "Superintendent will see you now." So I stood up and walked, and I gestured to offer him the blocks and the balance. And he looked at me, and he got it right away. He says, "Oh, you can't talk." So, bingo. Went into his office, he put the blocks down, and he started playing with them. I mean, he's a very intelligent guy, and he just was sucked in like so many people I've seen. I mean, adults get sucked into this game. They just got to figure out what's going on. And after about 5 minutes of putting things on the balances and getting them to work or not work, he paused and he looked at me and said, "This is the most fun I've had in months." Yeah. So by the time I left, he understood what I was trying to do. He gave his tacit blessing. He realized I was not trying to rip off students or exploit their labor. But I actually was doing something to raise money so I could help send kids to a camp that I run at the start of the school year. So it was all, on the up and up. But on the way out, he stopped and he shook my hand and said, "Bruce, if there's anything I can do to support you, just let me know what it is." Now this was at a time, effectively he was offering me financial support if I needed it. This is at a time when he was facing a $66 million budget shortfall. So again, the magic of math magic blocks. It keeps on happening.